Good day, everyone. Welcome back to Gaming News, where we determine what is going on in gaming. And as you may know, last week I didn't really put out a gaming news video because I had a few reviews to do, a few things to edit. I was also getting my first vaccine for COVID, so I decided that this week's video is going to be a little bit longer. And I was going to try and cover a whole bunch of things that happened from last week to this week. So buckle up, there's a lot of things to cover, and I'm going to go through it as quickly, as humanely possible, so that this is painless on the editing aspect, but also so that it's not a super long video for all of you. So with that, let's get started. And that is Fed seized Robinhood CEO's phone in GameStop trading and halts investigation. So you may recall that a couple months back, GameStop was in the news because there were a whole bunch of people through the Robinhood investing app that they could buy shares to GameStop and sell them and do essentially what many of the wealthy people do, and in order to gain profit. And I'm not going to go into the details of investing because I fully believe that even though I was licensed through Ontario to talk about certain things regarding segregated funds and insurance, I do not want to financially advise you guys on what to do or not to do with your money. So I advise you to go and research about investing and about the Robinhood situation if you don't know anything about it. But following all of that, what ended up happening is Robinhood, the stock trading app that was subject to a record fine Wednesday, announced its intentions to go public Thursday. In its filing documents, the company admits that many of its customers are furious about how it handled January's GameStop stock bonanza, and that it is currently subject of at least 49 class action lawsuits related to trading restrictions it placed on the stock in January. The company also said it is under investigation by a series of regulators, state attorney generals, the SEC, and the U.S. Department of Justice in proceedings associated with the trading restrictions. The company said its CEO, Vladimir Tenev, has also had his cell phone seized by federal attorneys. In January, Robinhood restricted the purchase of GameStop, AMC, and other meme stocks because the app literally did not have enough money to comply with regulations that require a certain amount of liquidity from companies that allow for stock trading. This restriction correlated with a days-long dive in the stock prices of GameStop, which skyrocketed in January and February and led to widespread calls from lawmakers, traders, and Redditors on the Wall Street Bets subreddit to investigate Robinhood. Now, the fallout from this is that there were a lot of people who were sort of leaning on the fact that the stocks of GameStop were fairly low, or at least within a certain average, that a lot of people who make a lot of money and invest a lot of money lost a ton of money because of the fact that a lot of people were suddenly interested in stock trading through Robinhood on GameStop and decided to do the same tactics that the wealthy people were using to gain lots of money. And there were reports and stuff of a couple of kids who were like 14 who suddenly made a bunch of money through the purchase of some really low pricing stock. And a lot of people who were sponsored or backed by Robinhood in some way or promoted Robinhood ended up getting a whole bunch of backlash as a result of it. and Wall Street Bets, anything that was related to it, was stopped or archived or blocked in some way. As the article notes, that it wasn't just GameStop, but it was also AMC and a bunch of other stocks that were also just sort of performing rather sort of average. And Robinhood turned around and said, you are not allowed to buy stocks through our app anymore. You are now only allowed to sell, which pissed off a lot of people because you're supposed to have freedom when it comes to stock exchange, as long as you either have an investing agent with you to tell you about the market volatility, or you are doing your own research on these things and decide yourself whether or not you're going to invest in certain stocks. But anyways, I definitely encourage you to go look up more about the Robinhood app and what happened with the whole situation. But it's not looking good for them so far, and we'll just have to see what happens and if there's any kind of recourse for the investors that ended up getting screwed over, because there were plenty of people that lost millions of dollars because of this kind of thing. And then similarly, there were also a lot of people that gained a ton of money very quickly because of their stock trading. And it has made people more aware of the financial situation. And I know I watched a YouTube video with Mr. Wonderful himself, and he talked about this is sort of a good thing because it's now encouraging young people to learn about the proper principles of investing and to actually be financially intelligent about their purchases and about their investments, and perhaps actually starting to save money for retirement. The current generation of people have not been investing, have not been saving. In fact, their parents probably didn't educate them on proper financing, and therefore a lot of people are getting into their retirement years and having really nothing to show for it. And it is extremely sad and unfortunate that there are a lot of older people that have to depend on state programs or provincial programs to keep afloat until they are gone. So we're talking about a generation of people that are now learning the ups and downs of the investment world and how to be smart with your money. And so I kind of see the whole fallout of the Robinhood app as a good thing, because it's teaching people to go and actually research things that are very important, because generally our school systems do not teach about these kinds of things. So I'm not going to prattle on longer about that. We'll just have to wait and see what happens from the fallout of the Robinhood stock trading app and whether or not any of these class action lawsuits have legal standing and what happens at the end of that. But it could be a while before we see any sort of movement on it. So we'll have to wait. The next thing I want to talk about is Riot. Riot decided to do something very interesting. Now, as much as I'm not a massive fan for Riot Games because of the poor treatment of many employees, there was, of course, a massive expose about Riot Games written by Jason Schreier a couple of years ago now. And it just stands to reason that I personally am not a big fan of Riot Games because of their practices, not because of their products. And they did something that I actually see as a good thing. So I'm curious about what you guys think for this particular story, which is Riot releases royalty-free album for streamer. As we know, DMCA takedowns are a huge deal on Twitch, on YouTube, on different social media platforms. You can also get DMCA striked on Twitter as well for some of the memes and stuff that people have created to, licensed songs and licensed music. And it's been a bigger and bigger issue as companies struggle to figure out solutions that will make both the artists happy, or the companies happy, and the content creators who are using some of these media. So a lot of people have turned to various copyright-free playlists, and the fact that Riot releasing a royalty-free album for streamers is actually kind of a good thing. So Riot Games has launched an album of copyright-free lo-fi music designed for online creators. The 37-track record, titled Sessions VI, will provide streamers with music to play during live broadcasts without fear of incurring copyright claims from artists or publishers. The album is free to stream and available on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. Last month, streaming platform Twitch warned streamers about a rise in DMCA claims as the music industry clamped down on copyright violations. In an email sent to creators, the platform said it had received a large number of takedown notifications with 1,000 individual claims from music publishers, mostly directed at archived video content. That said, that doesn't actually protect you from anything. We have covered some of the DMCA issues previously in these videos, where DMCA claims were going against VODs that were already deleted, so it was kind of twofold. If you still had the VODs or the video that was taken down, and you have it locally independent, you could theoretically use that in court to show if you did or did not, commit the crime. The thing here is, if you provide that proof, if there is music there, then you've basically stated that you're guilty. And it's a beautiful double-edged sword for which a lot of people have been really up in arms. So I fully suggest things like Pretzel Rocks, Chill Hop, which is actually incorporated into Pretzel Rocks. There's Monster Cat. There's a whole bunch of other copyright-free music that you can use. YouTube has its own list of music that you can use, and it tells you in one of the columns whether or not you have to actually state anything like this song belongs to this person and I'm using this with permission. And then there's other music by YouTube that's completely cleared that you don't need to state anything whatsoever on your YouTube video, and you're allowed to monetize those things. So the fact that Riot has decided to release its own music is a good thing, and it's 37 tracks, and if we assume that these tracks are roughly 3 minutes, that's a decent amount of music that streamers can use. But I think this is a good step. If video game companies are starting to look at their own music creation, I don't see anything bad with this, because that's going to help promote their games and show that, hey, you can play this on stream without us having to both license music and then create our own music. But the flip side of that too is that if you have an indie company, they might not have the resources to hire musicians to create an entire soundtrack. We'll have to see what happens with this, but I'm very curious to know what your opinions are about Riot releasing this album, and if you think that it will get picked up by other video game companies. Let me know in the comments or in Discord. Next, I want to talk about Ubisoft. Ubisoft decided to pull Might and Magic 10 Legacy from sale after DRM servers shut down backlash. And this has also been updated recently too. So the update is Ubisoft is currently investigating all available options after delisting Might and Magic 10 Legacy. In a statement issued to Eurogamer this morning, the company attempted to explain what had caused the issue outlined outlined below that currently prevents owners of the RPG from accessing single-player content. We are constantly assessing what's needed to deliver the best possible experience for our players, Ubisoft said. On the 1st of June, we shut down various services for several legacy games on PC, including Might and Magic 10 Legacy, as they could no longer meet our security standards. I'm sorry. What security standards? Like, this is, if you're looking at the single player portion and that's the part that's not being accessed, what security standards? Like, are you basically admitting to taking more information from your players to sell off to the highest bidder? Like, what is happening here? I can kind of understand if you have some kind of anti-cheat system in place and you've got a multiplayer online game where you're trying to make sure that people have a very good experience. And if that doesn't meet security standards, I could see that being taken down. But for single player, I have a problem. I had a problem with it when it came to Warcraft 3 and how they made the original Warcraft 3 no longer playable even as a single player campaign section. And here is Might and Magic 10, which I've played a couple of the Might and Magic games, and I really enjoy them, but if I don't have the ability to play a single-player game because of security standards, I have some very, very big questions for Ubisoft, and they're continuing to show me that they might not be a very good company based on a whole load of other things that I'm not going to get into here. The original story was on July 5th. The update happened, by the way, on July 7th. Ubisoft has pulled Might and Magic 10 Legacy from sale following a backlash to its server shutdown. Might and Magic 10 Legacy, a role-playing game released back in 2014, was recently included in a list of older games for which Ubisoft had decided to end online support. Again, it's a single-player game. You're ending online support, I get that, but why would you stop the single player? What the fuck? Anyways, by doing so, however, Ubisoft also appeared to shut down DRM servers for the game, leaving some unable to access significant portions of its single-player content and its DLC. And, as Emma reported last month, despite these issues, the game and its DLC were left on sale. No more. On Might and Magic 10 Legacy's Steam page is a note to say Ubisoft requested the game might be pulled. While this change means new players won't end up buying a broken game, it does nothing to help existing customers who still do not have access to single-player content and its DLC. The Steam review bombing has continued. Recent reviews are now very negative, and Ubisoft has yet to comment on the delisting. We've asked. Now, this is one of those things you have to consider when it comes to cloud saves and always online, is that there is a bit of a shelf life when it comes to video games. I understand you spend 60, 70, 80, hundreds of dollars on a video game and its DLCs to play them and expect that you're going to always have access. Well, if Steam servers shut down for whatever reason it happens to be, whether it's a blackout, whether there's weather conditions, whether it's your service provider is just hot garbage that day and can't connect, those kinds of things can and do happen on a regular basis. And the fact that we are wholly dependent on online services, even for single player games, if you're running by yourself and you do not access the multiplayer version, there are a lot of games that require that internet connection. And it shows that they're obviously trying to do things with that information by constantly having a connection open to your computer. When it comes to single player games, I'm more upset when I cannot access the information or cannot even play a game because the developers or the publishers have deemed that it's going to be an always online service. And if the power goes out, well, many of you will not have many video games that you can play because you can't be online. And I am fortunate enough that I have certain games that are only on my computer and not through Steam or anything like that I can play without issue. So just keep that in mind when it comes to these kinds of things. But I hope that they address this situation, and I hope that companies stop screwing over their player base by cutting off the single player content because they're not online anymore to receive whatever information and or send out whatever information. Next, we have a double whammy when it comes to PlayStation. So the first thing is PlayStation website no longer lists friends, parties, and trophies. You have to use the PlayStation app to view the 3 features. So the PlayStation's website has removed the ability to see online friends, parties, and view trophies. As first reported by GameSpot, the PlayStation website has now been altered by Sony. With the new update, the features for viewing friends and parties, as well as scrolling through your in-game trophies, are no longer available and have been entirely removed from the website. Instead, users are recommended to use the PlayStation mobile app to take advantage of all the features removed from the official website. The removed part of the website was actually known as My PlayStation for those unfamiliar, and has acted as an extension for the aforementioned roles for 3 years now, after having been originally launched in 2018. Right now, you can still use the PlayStation website to peruse your online PSN profile, as well as viewing information about all your owned games. It's not entirely clear why Sony has made the decision to remove the friends, parties, and trophies information, and whether they intend to further alter any other aspects of the PlayStation website in the immediate future. This is kind of interesting, and I'm not sure why they would do that unless Sony is continuing to funnel all of their fans into one location and just try and hold on to the dregs of the exclusivity and cutting people off from connecting. As we know, Xbox has definitely stepped up when it comes to using the Game Pass and to connecting people through no matter what the platform, and wanting to remove the barriers that were originally caused by the console wars and the exclusive titles that they would launch. And for a time, PlayStation was dominating. Well, Xbox has seen the light and seen that many more people are flocking towards computer gaming as opposed to console gaming, and therefore they're trying to make sure that their titles are as available to the public as possible, so that even if you have the console, you can play the game, and you will also be able to play those games with your friends who happen to be on a computer. Whereas Sony has gone the complete opposite direction, and they're continuing to release exclusives, and they're continuing to shelter themselves from the rest of the gaming industry, and creating a very close-knit infrastructure to ensure that they keep their people and holding on for dear life. And it's not looking very good for Sony as they continue to do things that are anti what the gaming industry is doing at the moment. And then the second thing that I came across was PlayStation has officially removed Japan Studio from its list of studios. The official site no longer lists Japan Studios among its teams. So, the PlayStation webpage has a page that lists each of Sony's studios, including the likes of Insomniac Games, Naughty Dog, and Guerrilla. As of last month, as spotted by Push Square and captured by the Internet Archive, the page included Japan Studio in the list, referring to it as the long-standing talent behind some of PlayStation's most original titles. As the page stands now, however, Japan Studio is no longer present. In its next place is Team Asobi, the studio behind the pre-installed PS5 game Astro's Playroom. So, as you can see, this was the original lineup here with Bend, Gorilla, Insomniac, and then Japan Studios. And now this is what it lists. It's the same sort of first three and then Team Asobi. And it's a very obvious change. Like, you know, this is very small, like in the backdrop, and this is like colorful and in your face, and it has a little cute robot with a little antenna. Anyways, Sony reorganized Japan Studio into a new organization on April 1st, and the vast majority of its development staff was let go, VGC exclusively reported in February. The iconic developer behind Ape Escape, Gravity Rush, and Knack saw the vast majority of its development staff leave after their annual contracts were not renewed ahead of the company's next business year, starting on April 1st. Some Japan Studio staff have joined Team Asobi, while others have followed Silent Hill and Gravity Rush director Kichiro Toyama, who left Japan Studio last year, to his new studio, Bokeh. People with knowledge of the matter told VGC that Sony Japan Studio simply hasn't been profitable enough in recent years. The developer wanted to create games that appeal to the Japanese market first, with hopes of having global appeal, while PlayStation wants the kind of global hits that its other first-party studios produce. And that just goes to show you that, like, they're trying to do stuff to be big for the international market, whereas Japan studios seem to be more focused on Japanese gamers, which makes sense. You know, you want to have a bit of a diversified portfolio so that you can still have sales in other countries. Although the wide appeal will make a difference whether or not you partner up with a studio. And the fact that they were not having good sales, it kind of makes sense that this happened. But again, I don't see how this is necessarily helpful for Sony and for PlayStation, because obviously you're letting a very well-known company go by the sidelines and take on sort of a new company that has some of the same staff. It kind of feels like a slap in the face to those who had been loyal to the studio and to the franchises that they created. So we'll have to see what happens, if this helps Sony at all, but we'll have to just keep an eye out. Next up, we have Humble Bundle. Humble to take minimum 15% from bundle sales moving forward. Games storefront Humble has announced some changes to how paying for its bundles work. In a blog post, the company revealed that it was going to take a minimum of between 15 to 30% from the price consumers pay for a bundle on its service from the middle of July. Previously, users had the ability to say that zero money went to Humble when they were buying something. Normally, to be able to give more cash to the charities they were supporting. Why change after 10 years? The PC storefront landscape has changed significantly since we first launched bundles in 2010, and we have to continue to evolve with it to stay on mission, Humble wrote. The update will allow us to continue to offer great prices on amazing games, books, and software, all while supporting important charitable initiatives with every single purchase. The change to sliders lets us continue to invest in more exciting content so we can keep growing the Humble community, which will ultimately drive more donations for charitable causes. We also continue to create more ways to give back, such as with our 100% to charity bundles. Earlier this year, Humble announced that it was going to be capping charity donations to 15% from May. The company walked back on this strategy shortly after following a backlash. And that's huge, because a lot of people are really invested and interested in Humble Bundle sales because you can get amazing games for dirt cheap by continuing to pay sort of a monthly fee or an annual fee in order to access those games. And they didn't take a cut. So obviously, what is happening here is Humble is not making as much through their ad revenues or their sponsorship. There's just such emphasis placed on companies will live or die by the sponsors and by the investments that they have through other means, because you're not just going to make up all of that money through product. And this is exactly the case. If they're taking 15% moving forward, even if you're excluding the charity bundles, you're looking at a significant influx of cash to the company to be able to make some of these deals. And it may be harder and harder to get a bunch of game codes for a company because those companies are also struggling as a result of the pandemic. We have to sort of go through this drought of issues caused by the pandemic before everything is actually back to a sustainable normal. And it's crushing a lot of businesses, and we would hate to see Humble become negatively affected because they're just not making the money or not getting the sponsorship deals or however it is that they are getting that influx. I guess it kind of makes sense to me that they would start to take some of the profits from the bundles, but keep in mind that this doesn't necessarily mean that the cost is going to increase. Like, they still want to make video games available for the consumers. Hopefully that this does not turn into they're going to charge a lot more for Humble Bundle, because I feel like that would kick them in the teeth. But it does stand to reason that at the moment, things should be okay. You're not going to see a veritable difference. And if they're still making sure that 100% of the charity bundles are going to go to that charity, I am actually kind of okay with this news. And it's up to you whether or not you continue to use Humble Bundle or what happens with your decisions from this point forward. Next up, we have the Esports Observer. So, the Esports Observer and Sports Business Journal have decided to grow closer together, giving TEO a new home with SBJ. Why would we do that? In my previous emails, I laid a data-driven foundation and discussed why traditional sports are relevant for the esports industry. To deliver the best sports and esports experience in one place, we have decided to give TEO a new home within Sports Business Journal, and we'll move our content and website into the Sports Business Journal web infrastructure. On July 12th, this is going to reflect the official change. So the two most important things to consider is the Esports Observer content will still remain free. However, there are a few changes I would like to walk you through. What you need to know when you hit our new home for the first time, we will kindly ask you to re-register your account with us. To do so, we will include a sign-up link in next week's email. Once you have signed up, we kindly ask you to access the Preference Center to select the information you want to receive from us. The TEO Daily and the TEO Weekly newsletters will be discontinued as well. Instead, you will receive a weekly newsletter created by SBJ and TEO. All daily esports content will be integrated into SBJ's existing newsletters. The desktop notifications you currently receive from the TEO will be disabled. We will keep you posted and inform you once we launch this functionality for the new site. On the same note, we will disable the Google and LinkedIn login for now. We will keep you posted and let you know when you can sign in with Google and LinkedIn again. So, I mean, this could be interesting. because obviously sports and esports do have some commonality, and he has definitely shown that there is something to be learned sort of from each other, and clumping it all together in one thing is not necessarily a bad idea, especially when you consider that esports has been trying to become part of the Olympics for some time. This weirdly doesn't surprise me, but those of you who are interested in more data-based information about esports and acquisitions, new ownership, and that kind of thing, you can get a lot of that information through the Esports Observer. And I've been following it for years, so this is relevant to me. It may be relevant to some of you, but I just wanted to update you on that situation. Next up, we are going to talk about Tencent, and the first one will be Blizzard. Blizzard vet startup RTS Studio with Tencent backing. Lightspeed and Quantum's new uncapped games aiming to make an accessible entry in the genre without sacrificing strategic depth. Uncapped Games lead designer David Kim worked as a designer on all three parts of StarCraft 2, and while he spent his more recent years at Blizzard working on Diablo 4 and World of Warcraft, he had an itch to return to the real-time strategies genre. I've always wanted to take a shot at another RTS game for a very long time now, maybe close to a decade, Kim tells Game Industry Biz in a recent conversation. I had been reached out to by various people, and I've talked to various companies, but these ones felt like an opportunity of a lifetime for me. If we were going to take a stab at the next great RTS, I thought we needed the right company, the right people within our development team, and we needed to clearly align beliefs in what we're trying to do. It turns out the right company was Tencent subsidiary Lightspeed and Quantum Studios, which helped Kim set up Uncapped Games with the right people, including Uncapped lead producer Jason Hughes and Uncapped lead engineer, both Blizzard industry veterans. And as for the alignment of beliefs, Kim says the team was very much on the same page as the head of Lightspeed, Jerry Chen, when they met. One of the things he said was just focus on making a great PC RTS game and don't worry about the other factors, Kim says. The measurement of success is if we have a great game. So obviously they're talking about releasing a new real-time strategy game, and that we're talking about industry veterans who worked on things like StarCraft and the original Warcrafts, which were actually RTS games, by the way. Well, now there's a lot of RTSs out there that they can learn and expand on, and I'm extremely interested to see what they come up with and what they've learned from balancing a well-known esport. So I can't wait to see what happens. And of course, there's going to be all the jokes about David Kim, you broke my game, and balance issues and all of that great stuff. So I'm interested to see how things turn out with this new game. And if it's not Blizzard, all the better. Tencent isn't a miracle worker. I've talked a lot about they're mostly an investment company, and they're looking to help various companies get on their feet and obviously to make a profit. I imagine there's something going on there, but that doesn't mean that they don't have their own demons. Tencent is using facial recognition to crack down on kids playing games at night. Players must pass a facial scan to prove they're old enough to log on after 10 p.m. Gaming monolith Tencent has launched facial recognition technology that will stop children in China logging into games after a certain time of day. The Midnight Patrol feature, as reported by the BBC, will ban children from playing games between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. a.m. Player IDs are linked to a national database, and young gamers have reportedly been using adult IDs to circumnavigate the curfew. However, this new facial recognition technology will be used to further prove that the person playing is an adult. Anyone who refuses or fails the face verification will be treated as a minor, and as outlined in the anti-addiction supervision of Tencent's game health system and kicked offline, Tencent said in a statement. The technology will be implemented in over 60 games, including market-dominating titles such as Honor of Kings and Game of Peace. In 2019, Tencent introduced its gameplay management system to encourage healthier gaming. At launch, this included a notice to acknowledge and regular pop-ups to take breaks. The company also launched a digital lock system around this time that restricts players under 15 to 2 hours of gameplay per day. This is huge. Now, we're in North America, and we don't have necessarily the same restrictions when it comes to designations made by the WHO or whatnot. It's just a matter of game companies deciding on what they feel is right and what is legal in their country. And China basically parenting for you kind of concerns me. Now, the fact that it is restricted to China right now and that people like player IDs are linked to a national database, that is freaking crazy to me, especially considering privacy concerns. This is a whole mess, and this kind of terrifies me, to be honest with you. The idea that they're going to use facial recognition to stop kids from playing at night is kind of concerning, just as a North American, as a Canadian that values privacy. And I understand the importance of schooling. I understand the importance of fostering a healthy relationship with your children and a healthy upbringing, and that addiction is a bigger concern. But at the same time, I also know about video games that have been released that you can be prescribed by a doctor to play to help with certain issues that a person may have. And there's a lot of good things that can come from video gaming, and then there's, you know, the negative aspects of gaming as well. We are not infallible. Clearly, this is something that works for them. But to me, this is kind of a terrifying idea that the government can now restrict you from playing certain games if you live in China, and that you have to be linked up with this national database. Like, I can't even think about the idea of your username being linked to a real person, linked to a database, which who knows what information has to be included in that, other than maybe age and like where in China you live kind of deal. But I feel like that kicks open the door to making it easier for hackers and doxers to get a hold of your personal information and just open this massive can of worms as well. And we've already seen that multiple companies and institutions have been targeted by hackers a lot to gain all kinds of information. I don't know if people should allow the government to step in more and basically tell people how to take care of your children. I don't know, this is really scary to me. I would love to know what you guys think about this. Again, Tencent isn't infallible. They have certainly done a lot of egregious things, and this is kind of scary that Tencent would do this, and I hope to God that they don't start trying to implement the same things in North America and into our video games and lives, because I don't like any of this. And the very last thing I want to cover is Audacity. PSA, if you use Audacity, the new owners just updated the terms of service so they can collect data on you, including for very open-ended legal enforcement, and then sell it to potential buyers, all without your consent. So in this tweet, they actually have screenshots. It was last updated on July 2nd. So what personal data does Audacity collect and why? The very limited types of personal data that we may collect about you and the reasons why we process it are as follows. As a general comment, our app does not require you to create an account or profiles, and we do not ask you to provide us with your name, contact details, or any other direct identifiers. So why we collect it and legal grounds for processing. So for app analytics and improving our app, the data they collect is your OS version, your country based on an IP address, the OS name and version, your CPU, non-fatal error codes and messages, i.e. project failed to open, crash reports in breakpad mini dump format, and the legal grounds is legitimate interest of WSM Group to offer and ensure the proper functioning of the app. Most of that makes sense to me. I mean, if you're looking at information to make sure that your program or app is compatible with your operating system, that is useful information to have. And then they also collect data necessary for law enforcement, litigation, and other authorities' requests, if any. So, legitimate interest of WSM Group to defend its legal rights and interests. Now, what this means is if DMCA continues to be a thorn and whatnot, now any music or audio that you rip using Audacity with certain versions of Audacity, because it was only a newer update, they can provide that information, including your IP address, from my understanding, for enforcement against you and going to court, that is what litigation is, or other authorities if requested. That's kind of scary. So then who does Audacity share your personal data with? We may disclose the personal data listed above, your hashed IP address, to the following categories of recipients. To our staff members, we take precautions to allow access to personal data only to those staff members who have a legitimate business need for access and with a contractual prohibition of using the personal data for any other purpose. To any competent law enforcement body, regulatory, government agency, court, or other third party where we believe disclosure is necessary as a matter of applicable law or regulation, or to exercise and establish or defend our legal rights. To our auditors, advisors, legal representatives, and similar agents in connection with the advisory services they provide to us for legitimate business purposes and under contractual prohibition of using the personal data for any other purpose. To a potential buyer and its agents and advisors in connection with any proposed purchase, merger, or acquisition of any part of our business, provided that we inform the buyer it must use your personal data only for the purposes disclosed in this notice, and to any other person if you have provided your prior consent to the disclosure. So, some of your information could be sold. Not that this should be surprising to anyone, because our information is constantly sold if it's been acquired, but still, the idea that this is an audio program recording, if you have updated this recently to have these new stipulations involved, they can take information about you and your use of the program. So On GitHub, we have the most recent thing, which is clarification of the privacy policy, which is we believe concerns are due largely to unclear phrasing in the privacy policy, which we are now in the process of rectifying. In the meantime, we would like to clarify what seem to be the major points of concern. Selling data and sharing. We do not and will not sell any data we collect or share with a third party. Full stop. Do we believe this? I don't know. This isn't a full legal document, by the way. This is on GitHub. This is an open source distribution platform. Data collection. Data we collect is very limited. Your IP address, which is pseudonymizes and irretrievably collects after 24 hours. Most, at least in North America, most internet service providers give you a static, or not a static IP, but a revolving IP, meaning that anytime you shut off your computer, disconnect from that, your IP address will change. And the IP address, the first couple of digits actually indicate the service provider you're with, and the service provider only operates in certain places. So then you're looking at basic system information like your OS version and CPU type. Error reporting, just to make sure that the program is working. Compliance with law enforcement. We will not collect or provide any information other than data described with any government entity or law enforcement. If you're compelled by the court, which means there's a legal document sent to the company, the data is not shared upon an agency request. We will do so only if compelled by a court of law in jurisdiction that we serve. So that is slightly comforting, but still it can be compelled by courts to use. And again, I'm concerned when it comes to DMCA, this might just open the door to ways that music companies are going to access information and start prosecuting individual users if they are found to be taking too much information using Audacity. Jurisdiction requirements. We operate in many countries around the world, and this is standard policy requirement for providing services in many jurisdictions, regardless of the depth of data collected or nature of service. Offline use. The privacy policy does not apply to offline use of the application, meaning that if you're connected to the internet and you are doing stuff with audio, they can potentially collect that information. But if you are doing this offline, not connected to anything, they, in theory, are not going to be able to take any of that information. But still, this is not documented, like a legal documentation. This is obviously an update to their privacy policy. It only applies to certain Audacity versions. There hasn't been other statements that I know of regarding this, but we're going to keep a close eye on this one because that may change a whole bunch of things that content creators can use to capture audio. And I can see why they are paranoid about it, but I don't know. There's not enough information right now, and I don't know if I trust the information released here or who this guy is. So we're gonna have to keep an eye out on what's going on with this and why there is that change. But it's a little bit scary that if you are recording certain music or clips of information through Audacity, because it is a free to download program and basically free to use program, a number of their features you do not need any kind of subscription. With the newer versions, they're going to start collecting this data more, and we don't know what it's used for unless music companies are cracking down on music applications to try and stop people from gaining information. Now we have other ways with which to gain information, and now Audacity is being hit. And if the music industry is not having any success getting what they want through YouTube or through Twitch or any other platform, now they're starting to look at applications that help to facilitate this spreading of creation that is now like has been making the money. Well, now they're not making the money that they wanted to, and it's basically the music companies finding every avenue to force people into paying them for the services, which kind of makes sense, but going after applications like this is kind of scary, and it means that content creation is going to be more and more interesting and more difficult as we navigate the legalities of these things. Anyways, I know that was an incredibly long video. I apologize. I had 2 weeks worth of stuff to catch up on, which is why this is an hour long. And thank you so much for sticking with me through everything. Hopefully that gives you all kinds of good and interesting information that I would love to hear your feedback on any of the topics that we have covered between Riot, Ubisoft, Robinhood, PlayStation, Humble, the Esports Observer, Tencent, and of course the Audacity issue. And as always, thank you so much for being supporters of the channel. You have been wonderful people, and I hope you have a fantastic day. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.